Hey everyone, it's Kai, and it's that time again when we talk about some preliminary decks for the upcoming set. Now, we did that for set 1, with 10 archetypes all up. We talked about the preliminary decks for each of them, what I was playing with, and then later on, just for the English release, I did an update to that video where we had more refined lists because we had way more time playing, the meta was more developed, and the English meta, we're always like behind, so we have at least a good idea on what is good for standard format, but in premium formats, I think we're ahead. No, we're ahead. Come on. But yeah, we're gonna do the same thing for set 2. I'm gonna make some preliminary decks here, or I have preliminary decks that I've been playing with already here, and then I'll just show it to you to give you a good idea, or just an idea on how you might want to build your decks going into set 2, at least for the people playing with JP cards. I don't know what cards will be good. I mean, I kind of do. I don't know what decks will be played or how other people will build their decks, because we're gonna start seeing them in a couple of days, and then as they get more refined, we're going to do an update to that when the English set is about to be released. So 12 decks all up this time, and we're going to start with the Nirvana deck. Now, Nirvana has gone, well, overDress overall has gone through some insane changes. It basically went from what I consider to be a kind of a low tier deck or a mid tier deck to now probably one of the stronger decks in the entire format, because it can multi-attack. It is not a 3-attack deck anymore. It is a 3 times X attack deck, probably 2 plus 1. But yeah, because it's got some new cards, it makes it really good. Right now, the focus is the Urger, Elgar, and the Trickstar combo, where you mid battle phase overdress the Trickstar to make an extra attack with Urger, and that's the entire deck, right? That's the entire deck. Otherwise, you know, there's more grade 0 support if you want to go through that way, but this time we're just focusing on the Urger multi-attack kind of combo. There's other ways to make multi-attacks. We've got Damari here. This one calls a 0 during the battle phase, so you can call like a Trickstar, and then after the Trickstar attacks, you battle phase and go into the Urger. So that's basically some of the small combos. You do notice I am running Horn of Blessing here. This is a discard. This is an order where you discard an overdress card to draw 2. So right now, since Urger, it requires 2 Soul Blast, we basically don't really care about Virina anymore. Virina is just there because we play the Ride Chain, and because we're confirming a Virina, either we can overdress it to put on some aggression, or we can just discard it to draw more cards. As you can see, we're not running draws anymore. We're running the new front triggers, which give 20k shield, and because we don't have that draw, having a draw from the Horn of Blessing is very nice, just to kind of fish you more cards that you might want and fish you more Persona Rides, which is very important. Now, there is an issue with the deck, in my opinion, is that we don't really have any good boosters. I'm running this Togashirashi, I think, which basically is that when you discard him during your turn, it goes to your soul. So for the ride phase, you know, you can discard it, and just I like it because it's just very natural. When you use Nirvana's effect as well, you can just discard it and it goes to your soul. It builds soul so you can do more Urger turns. And it's just very natural in how it all works out. That's why I'm liking it. So I know other people like Myron better and things like that, but I just like this card. And the biggest problem is that, you know, your Trickstars aren't hitting because you don't really have any good boosters. You don't have an AK booster at all, pretty much. So the way that you can, the only way they can really pull that off is like if you combo with the Persona Ride to make this hit 15k. And I think that's something that you have to just kind of get used to. You don't want to just keep on spamming the Persona Ride, because Nirvana himself can just pump things up pretty big, but you're saving your Persona Ride for the big turns, and that's how you kind of push. I think that's just one way to go with it. There's definitely other ways. I know some people have told me they like playing just some normal boosters as well, just be able to hit that 13k threshold. And yeah, we'll see how that develops. But right now, that's how I'm playing the deck, and I know like there's some more grade 0 focus decks out there that are more aggressive, and that could work too. We'll see, right? So that is the Nirvana deck for me for now. Moving on, let's talk about the Eugene deck, the meme deck. Now, Eugene's kind of gone through quite a lot of changes. Before it used to be meme, now it's slightly less meme. It's gotten some good cards. Actually, it's got Idris, which is just another, it's basically your Nigel, except he goes to Soul. So that's pretty good. You know, going to Soul is nice. You also got this new card. I think this is this new Brachio, Brachio. This guy is insane. He basically does everything you want him to do. it's kind of free retire. It's a Soul Blast 1 rest to retire 1, and then it can stand during the battle phase if your opponent has 1 or less rearguards, and it gets 5k, so it hits the number. So it's doing everything. This guy is kind of carrying on the back. We're still running Tri-Bash just because he's really cool. So after, you know, keeping some of the better cards from the old set, right? So you still have your Ride Chain. You're still running Tri-Bash because I think, you know, getting crits and generating soul is really good. And then the 15k hitter, 15k hitter is still good. And then just chaining the fronts. Like, you're gonna notice one thing is that I've changed a lot of the trigger lineups to the new fronts to replace draws. Some decks still run draws, but a lot of them have been changed to fronts just because 20k shield is amazing. It's just really good. And yeah, that's why. So after playing all the old stuff that is still good, and then playing all the new stuff that is good, there's basically only 3 slots remaining, and you kind of just run this guy, right? It's just Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, Act, retire something in the same column as this card, so at least you can keep on retiring. There's not really any other great cards to run, unfortunately. I guess you can run Reno just to bash a bit more. That's about it, I guess. You can run Tenja Stead to try to get Persona Rise. But apart from that, you see, there's no sum punishment or anything like that, because you do get quite a few more retires now, and you can kind of play this as kind of just a heavy retire deck that, yeah, that can randomly high roll. So that's pretty much it. Moving on, we have Dragonic Overlord. So Dragonic Overlord kind of just builds itself, and it's kind of very similar to the old Dragonic Overlord builds that you probably played like 10 years ago, except the effects are only slightly better. So my initial build of this is we just want to run a full contingent of the encounter cards. I think the one card that you can run less of is Gojo, just because it needs to boost the Vanguard and it needs to hit. I mean, the hitting part's not hard, but you just have to be able to boost Vanguard, and then you retire its countercharge 1. Right now, in terms of counter blast, I guess there's an okay amount. Like Dragonic Overlord requires 1, Berserk Dragon requires 1, but apart from that, like Bar requires 1, but you know, like that's only on the ride line. But apart from that, you don't really require a lot of counterblast at all. So you can probably just replace some Gojos with other things if you're happy to just not run less. Apart from that, we've got this Monk Boy, which gives 10k. It retires itself and gives 10k to something, and then we're running 3 Renos because it's like a multi-function card, right? The key thing about this card is that it gets 2k with attacks on the rearguard circle. So it can be a booster, it can be a 10k attacker, and like a 10k plus 8k is 18, so that hits numbers. So in terms of when you look at the deck, you only run like 8 grade 2 cards, but you know, adding the Reno on, it becomes like 11 attackers, so that's kind of pretty decent. And then things like your Bar and Berserk Dragons just naturally get fat. Same with your Nahalems as well. They just naturally, they get plus 5ks, and they'll hit things like 23, 28 pretty easily and force out guards. And then the rest of the deck is just adding this order. This is a 15k order, just for the extra shield. You can see that I'm actually not running fronts in this deck. I'm running draws because you don't get a lot of pluses with this deck at all. At best, you get an extra drive with Dragonic Overlord. So you basically get like 3 drive checks, but like one of them's like a kind of hand filter, because you're discarding one to get that extra drive check. So I'm still running draws, because 3 draws plus the overtrigger is basically like 4 draws, unless you trigger the overtrigger, which is just, you know, you restand, which is extra attack. So extra draws, right? But yeah, we're running that just because we can be more aggressive as well. Draws, as funny as it sounds, but if you remember old Vanguard, draws actually equal more aggression because they give you more cards in hand to be able to push with, and a 5k shield, just chop it on the ground and you can still boost and deal damage. And then, you know, drawing a Reno means you can push early with it and things like that, right? So overall, I'm running draws, and then you hand filter the rest of your deck with Overlord skill to try and get into high shield cards to get rid of your 5ks, and maybe you get like the 15k order or just other triggers to be able to guard with it and grind it out like that. So that's pretty much all of the Dragon Empire decks. Now, we're going to move on to probably the most polarizing and, you know, crazy deck in the current format, and that is Bruce. Now, Bruce gets this one card that basically reshapes the entire format around it, and that is Leonard. So this guy, in case you haven't heard from everywhere, he basically gets to attack an entire column. So the second effect is when an attack hits, you soul charge 1, and then if your Vanguard is Bruce, you can call a card from your soul into an open circle, right? But if you're in Final Rush, then you get 5k and it attacks an entire column. Right? You choose a column and attack it. Even if they don't have a front row card and only a back row card, you can actually attack that and still get a hit off. So what that means is that this card is, you don't see a counterblast on this. This is free. It is gonna get rid of your stuff, and it only gets worse because even like 2 cards on a column, he's basically gonna be able to always hit 1 unless you commit a lot of guard down, and that's not easy. That is not easy, right? So if they're able to get a hit, they basically minus you. They minus you, and they get to call a free column, because when you combo this with a Proto Bulb, you're making empty spots on your front row, and the cards come out standing, so they get extra attack. So it kind of just goes downhill from there. And the good thing also about this deck, though, is that if you're a current Bruce player, there is not a lot of things you need to change with this deck. You take out your Brodies for Leonard. You take out your your draw triggers for new front triggers, or you take out your old front triggers for new front triggers, and then you run some of this Durba, right? But let's kind of, I think I kind of jumped ahead of myself. Leonard shaped the entire format because you don't want to play any boosters. And if you look back at my past couple of decks, right, this Nirvana doesn't run boosters, right? That's why it has troubles hitting with Trickster sometimes. But, you know, no boosters in the back row means it's easier to guard the Leonard, so it's easier to stop the extra attack. Unfortunately, Eugene, if you're a meme deck, you can't choose, right? But even like the Overlord deck, you technically don't need to put any boosters because your front row can naturally hit 15 by itself. And then things like your Gojo retires itself, and then the Monk Boy retires itself. So you can kind of empty your back row while still generating power. And that is all because of Leonard, and that's kind of gonna be a theme that you're gonna see through the rest of the entire of these deck lists, is we have to account for Leonard, and then how to play against Leonards, and then how to play against other matchups, right? But back to the deck, you can see that we're running the Acrobat Presenter and the new Doba, this new dog, all right? It's Gear Doba, yeah? So the reason why we're doing this, because before we ran Gungaram, right? And Gungaram allowed us to get that extra Soul Blast 3 draw 1 in the early game. But because of that, you have to run Acrobat Presenter to kind of refill your soul. But because we don't run Gungaram anymore, why do we still need to run Acrobat Presenter? We can run anything else, right? Well, the thing is, we don't have anything else. But also the other thing is, because of Leonard, you want to have quality cards to call out. So you kind of still want to overcharge as well. And then Proto Bulb, you want good cards to add to your hand. So yeah, overcharging is not really bad. Like soul charging and then over soul charging is not bad. So we're still running a full contingent of Acrobat Presenters just to get more soul charges in, to be able to call out quality cards with Leonard. But then we still have Doba, which opens up empty slots. They can put 10Ks on our Leonard to make it more threatening, and that's all good, right? So overall, this deck hasn't changed much. All you really need is just, you know, your Leonards, Dobas, and front triggers, and you're basically a tier 1 deck, right? A tier 1 deck. Now, moving on to the next deck that is also hasn't really changed much. That is Baromagnes. Now, this currently is one of the best budget decks in the entire format, but now it's kind of even more budget, and nothing's really changed. Like, if you built a deck now for Baromagnes, you're pretty much good to go. Like, unfortunately, there weren't that many good cards for Baromagnes, but it did get a new card. It got the, I think this is the Crimson Expeller, and what it does is when it attacks a Vanguard, you can soul charge 1. And then when it's in the soul, you may counterblast 1, and then put this card to the drop zone to soul charge 1, and then your Vanguard gets 10,000 power. So, you run this now instead of like the Colossus, because you can call it at grade 2 and attack and be aggressive with it while still getting a soul charge. That is key. If your opponent doesn't retire it or get rid of it, next turn you can swing again and get another soul charge. How good is that, right? And then also if it's in soul, you can soul charge 1, right? So basically the entire deck is all about soul. This is kind of known as the, I think, the Spencer So build, where he only ran 2 Baromagnes in the deck, 1 in the ride chain and 1 just in the deck. But now we're not even running that second one, right? We don't need to Persona ride. We just need to get to 15 soul ASAP. And then once we have that, we're smacking everyone down, right? If we're field wiping our opponent, we have nothing in the back row, it's easy to guard Linus as well. Right? But I feel like because of the format getting stronger in certain ways, we have to hit the 15 soul ASAP lead, and we just want to be able to have as many cards that can soul charge in the deck as possible. Pretty much the only cards here that do not soul charge is the Sonica. You have 2 in the deck, and then the Null Guards where you have 4 in the deck. Now, one thing we're also running is this, I think this is Time Durate Dragon, where when it comes into play, you can put a card from your hand into your soul and draw one. So basically, if you draw any of these cards, like even the triggers, right? I forgot to say the triggers also don't soul charge. But if you draw any of these triggers or the cards that don't soul charge and you really need soul, at least this Time Durate Dragon can help you kind of soul in a Jane card to maybe get you into a soul charging card, and that can make you hit thresholds that you might need. So, you know, extra copies of Brother Soul even as well, you know, since you can only play 1 order per turn. But yeah, that's basically my idea for Baromagnes. Hit 15 ASAP. Now we have a few more cards that allow you to do that. So once we do that, you know, just hope you win. Right, hope you win. Another deck that hasn't really changed much is Bastion. Now, if you're looking at this deck, this is nearly the same deck as you see right now, except we added like 3 orders. Right, this new order is actually pretty good. It's just Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. To play it, you do the following effects based on the number of grade 3s you have on the field. So you have 2 or more, you get to give one of your cards or one of your units 5,000 power. But then also if you have 3 or more, you also get to draw a card. And then if you have 4 or more as well, your Vanguard also gets +1 drive. So you're doing triple drive. This basically replaces the Holy Arrow of Judgment Cometh order, because it's like a CB1 and a Counterblast 1 to +2. So it's like the same thing except using 1 less CB and 1 soul charge. And then one of your draws is now a drive check instead. The only thing is you need 4 cards on the field, which is kind of bad, right? It's kind of bad. You need 4 grade 3s on the field actually, which is kind of bad because, you know, against Leonard, you don't want to have anything in the back row. But thankfully, we have Reflux, right? And Reflux puts in, call the Reflux out, do the order, and then put itself into soul. And then that's all fine and dandy, right? In doing so, it's like, I think this build is pretty similar to what I played in that Content Creator Cup. We're running 2 Solaria just because, you know, it's nice. It's not an order, so it won't miss from our Bastion effects or ride chain effects. We're running 3 Darkstrain, but be careful. Like, the way to play this deck, you don't want to commit all these cards early. The Darkstrain is literally just there for your push turns later on if you don't have a Persona ride, or if you're going for the kill and you just want to hit super high, right? We're running 3 because you just want to be free in discarding it and don't feel too bad. You just basically want to save 1 for the late game. But apart from that, you know, running 2 feels bad because then you're kind of forced to just keep that card if 1 goes to damage zone, etc. So that's why it's still at 3, but just be careful. We cut down on 1 Kokobille just because the playstyle right now is basically we're only putting cards in the front row. So with a Kokobille and 3 front row grade 3s, then it hits 10k, and that's as good as it gets right now. Unless you're against a non-Leonard deck, then just feel free to throw down cards, right? And the rest of the deck is just pretty straightforward because they're just good cards. We just took out draws for fronts, and that's pretty much it. So overall, the deck is pretty similar to it now. We just replaced the old order with new orders, and nice, right? I think it's still a very strong deck, right? It's still a very strong deck. Next, we've got Hexaorb. Now, Hexaorb, we haven't really seen it much. Because one of the biggest problems with Keta Sanctuary right now is that it has no good grade 2s that really do anything, and then all the grade 3s are just they're just Bastion. Even the Hexaorb grade 3s are Bastion stuff. But now Hexaorb got a whole bunch of new grade 2s that are really decent. So on the grade 3 count, yes, we're still running Facade just because, you know, on hit counter charge and soul charge is just great pressure. Reflux for the extra soul charge but extra power. But then here are the grade 2s that make life interesting, right? We got Owain, which is when it is placed on the field. If your Vanguard is a Hexaorb, you can Soul Blast 1 and look at the top 2 cards of your deck and pick up the 2 cards to put on the top of your deck and then the rest on the bottom of your deck. So this is scry. This is basically scry. If you drive trigger trigger, you can counterblast 1 and get 10k. But yeah, the main thing is you're fishing for triggers. All right. This Capult is an interesting card. This one is just counterblast 1, rest another rear guard. It's when you play it from your hand, by the way, so not just do it anyhow. Play it. It has to be placed from hand. So counterblast 1, rest one of your other rear guards, and then look at the top 1 card of your deck. If that is an order or a grade 3, put it in your hand. Otherwise, call it to the rear guard circle. So you can kind of stack your deck, then call with Capult, which is pretty nice. It also helps you dig for your Persona ride. But yeah, it just makes kind of like gets more cards, more bodies on the field, so you can kind of push with, or just helps you grab stuff, which is pretty good. And then this one is another big one. This is Diamond Sorceress. So when this is placed from your hand to the rear guard circle, if your Vanguard is Hexaorb or Pentagleam, so the grade 2, you can counterblast 1, discard a card, and then look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and then pick up the 2 cards and call them onto the rear guard circle, and then put the rest on top of your deck in any order. So again, when you're looking at these 2 cards now, there's 2 new cards that help you dig, and with Pentagleam as well, this helps you dig through your top deck to try and fish that the trigger, and then that just kind of makes everything much more rushy, and then the rest of the deck just kind of just throw bodies on the field and then push, right? And then play very aggressive like that. We run fronts, crits, rest of it is just good. We have 2 painkiller angels just because we don't really have anything to run. We don't have much counter charge and soul charge except for this grade 3 lineup and they have to hit, so we're not running things like Lepisto and all that. But the rest of the deck kind of just is now much more, it's just a fishing deck, you know, it's a fishing deck. It's totally changed the way you kind of play Hexaorb. Like when you currently play Hexaorb, it's like committing as little as possible and then, you know, try and trigger triggers. Now you can play kind of the same thing, but you also have a different playstyle which can help you against, like, help you rush down your opponent and put a lot of pressure like that, a lot of trigger pressure, etc. So overall, very good. The painkiller will help you, you know, dig through the empty spots or just refund itself back to hand, which just makes empty backers. Right. Lastly, for Keta, we have the new Phantom Blaster Dragon deck. Now, Phantom Blaster Dragon was looking pretty bad, to be honest, but with some new cards, it's totally changing. We're running the full complement of encounter cards again, just because if you look at these cards, they're very good at rushing, right? So look at this Blast the Dark. It can hit 15k basically. If you retire something this turn, it gets 5k. So 15k. Your Blaster Javelin just base 10k. During your turn, if your Vanguard is a blaster, it gets 2k. So just 10k hitting all the time. So you know you have very good power lines early game, and then later on when you get your Phantom Blaster Dragon, he calls a blaster card out, so you +1. And then if you're against a thing like Leonard, you can now retire the stuff that's like on the back row of your field to be able to just, you know, empty it and then put on pressure like that. Or you could just keep them and then just bash. So that easy option is there. You know, Maha also retires and then it's able to fish for things that are very good. The cards that save the deck is Brana, right? This card is if your Vanguard is a blaster, if this counts as 2 cards for retires, basically. So this saved the deck. This just saved the deck. Although she's 5k boosting a 10k is not bad. That's sitting 15 in the early game, and you know, with everything getting a 5k by itself, it's sitting 20. So it's still pretty good early game. Later on, you just retire it, and that's it. We're also running Capult because again, it can help you dig through your deck and get free cards, because you rest a card and call another card, but then you can just sack that card for Phantom Blaster Dragon. So that's it. That's how it works. And then otherwise, for the rest of the deck, I don't think you really use that much CB. You don't have to aggressively use this every single time, right? I mean, there's a few counterblasts there, but they're all kind of effects that are kind of, you don't need to use them all the time. Like you technically don't have to keep on using Phantom Blaster Dragon's effect every turn. Otherwise, you're gonna deck out very quickly. Well, not deck out. You're gonna run out of resources very quickly, right? So, and then like because of all that, because of basically how the deck is kind of just auto built, you had 1 slot and just put in a facade because it's soul charges and counter charges. But yeah, this is kind of what I'm gonna be playing with. I think it might actually have a pretty good like place in the format, just because how it can just rush early and then later on you can either just continue to rush, or you have the option of putting on crit pressure, etc. like that, and wiping fields. So I think it's actually, I'm actually liking this a bit more than Dragonic Overlord, to be honest. That sounds pretty crazy, right? Pretty crazy. So we're here with Zorgnolia again, updated Zorgnolia. Now, as you can see, there's some differences in this deck. We're not running Gunasera anymore, the bear stag, because it does require Counterblast, and generally this deck does require more Counterblasts now, because you have this new order called Wild Intelligence. Now, Wild Intelligence, it mills the top 3 of the deck, and then from your drop zone, you call something equal to or less than your Vanguard's grade to the rearguard circle. And if your Vanguard is Magnolia, you call 2 instead of 1. So this is just a nice plus, and generally you have just a lot of good cards that you might want to call back. But because of that, we don't really want to use the CB for Gunasera as well. But also we have more pressure cards now. So we have this new card called Daimanaru, and it basically gives a Magnolia effect to just 1 card. So when it comes to play, if your Vanguard is Magnolia, you Soul Blast 1, pick one of your rear guards, and for that turn, it can attack from the back row and give 5, and it gets power 5,000. And the second effect is just once per turn. You can, if your Vanguard is, if this card is chosen by your Vanguard's effect, it gets power 5,000. So Magnolia targets this, it attacks for, it gets plus 10k power instead, which is pretty cool. But the first effect allows us to just kind of push earlier with more multi-attacks. So that kind of solves that problem of pressure. We also have a few other cards that do require soul as well. So like Alenia again, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, call a free card. You kind of need this just to put on the pressure early. We don't run Spiritual Body Condensations anymore, although we do have this Wild Intelligence, which can kind of do the same thing, but if you mill too many 3s, then you feel bad, right? But we also have this Shooter. This just, you Soul Blast 1, bind an order card from your drop zone, and then call it to an empty rearguard circle. So you kind of just get a free body for free. If you've discarded like an order from Zorgnolia, I mean, not Vanguard Chain, that can come out if it's in your drop zone somehow, things like that. That's pretty cool. But because we're using so much soul as well, we're kind of forced to run this funky elephant, right? So it's when it attacks, based on the amount of cards in front of it, right? So if there's 2 or more cards in front of it, it gets power 5,000. If there's 3 or more cards in front of it, you can soul charge once. That's kind of helps your soul issue. How you set this up is you put it in the back row, and it attacks. And if you've got a card in front of it, and then your opponent has cards in that same column, then that's how you fulfill the 3 card condition, right? To get that soul charge. So you kind of have to place it properly, but we're still running Ghost Chase, so you can like reposition the elephant, but also you can like bounce the mineral. I don't know why I can't say it anymore. But just to bounce this, is it the Peacock Fox back into your hand to be able to like use its effect again, or whatever you call from Wild Intelligence. If you mill like 3 triggers, and you're like, okay, I guess I call my over trigger out, I can bounce it to my hands. Pretty good, right? So overall, you still have that extra. I still like Ghost Chase. It also adds to the order count. You have 7 orders. Although this dirty guy can only bounce back normal orders. It's still, having an order there will help you out with your shooters. So overall, I think that's pretty good. And less reliant on the Magnolia Persona ride makes his deck a bit more threatening, in my opinion. You don't need Gunasera. I mean, it might change down the line, but so far so good, right? Next, we actually move on to normal Zorga. Now, Zorga before is known as like kind of a toolboxy deck, but now it goes ultra toolbox because you have so many new orders, and these new orders are just really nice. But what has actually changed? Well, you have Dread Headhunter here, which can it gets power. It gets 5,000 power, so it can help hit some good numbers. At the same time, it decreases the cost of Counterblast when you Alchemagic. So when it comes into play for that turn, your next order Alchemagic is decreased by 1 Counterblast. So the way to play it is you have to call him from hand and then do your Alchemagic, or use Zorga's effect to call him out. and then you can Alchemagic, and it just, yeah, you save on some counterblast cost, which is nice, right? Just make sure you do the order correctly. We're still running 2 shooters because we run so many orders. It's going to be a free body on the field, and then we replace things like the front for new front, right? But then we just have the whole plethora of orders here, and the reasoning is, I'll explain why right now. So this one, this is the I think it's Regurgitation from the Underworld. Is that right? Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and then you can retire it. Like, you pick any player's reguard and you retire it, and then you call from the drop zone the same grade as that card, like a card with the same grade. But if you Alchemagic this card, you call 2. So you basically you can retire one of your opponent's cards and you call 2 of the same grade out, which is pretty nice. You're plussing, right? The problem is he's a grade 3, which is why we're still running Spiritual Body Condensations, just because this is like an early game kind of push card. It also doesn't require any counterblast, so you can be a bit more, you can play around with the numbers that way. The thing is, Soul Blast is also very easy to overcome just because of Hendrina, right? You have Hendrina, this just makes everything, all your soul, nothing. Like Dread Headhunter minuses 1 counterblast, Hendrina makes it free. So overall, soul is still a good way it's still a good way to use soul. I'm still running Agony. I like Agony. I still want to see an Agony early on just to mill some orders out and then call at least 2 cards. You can say that, you know, that you don't run a lot of cards that you want to call, but I still want to see this once per game. I'm still running Grief, Despair, and Agony, just because, you know, 3 10k powers is very nice, and the CB1 now is reduced, so that's good. And then to solve our order issues, we are running the I think this is Unnatural Death. So you CB1, and then you bind this card, and then from your drop zone, you can get up to 2 orders and add them to your hands. You can even add Ghost Chase back to your hand, which is a blitz order, so that's pretty cool. But it basically solves the problem of you having no orders down the track. You can bet 2 orders back, and you're kind of set for the rest of the game, and that's that. Now, we do need to change our kind of grade lineup when we're running Regurgitation. So I'm running like 5 grade 3, which is not a big change, but at least, you know, when you play against the Bastion, you can call like a Zorga and the Hydra back to hand, or back to the field, just so, you know, you have slightly more targets that way. Your grade 2s are pretty set. You've got like 7 targets you can call, and the grade 1s, you've got quite a few targets too. So the main change is like a -1 Dread Hunter maybe, just to get another 3, so this Regurgitation works slightly better, right? Slightly better. So it's kind of the Zorga deck I'm testing. I think you're definitely going to be changing a lot of the order lineups, because that's where the meat and the bones are. I know there's like the Nectar order that is basically a free power up. It's like for every 5 cards, one of your cards get 5k, and then you get 15 in the drop zone, you get a crit as well. But I'd rather spread my powers rather than just give it to 1 card that makes it super fat and easily nullable. You know what I mean? But, you know, that might change. That might change in the future. Okay, so moving on to brand game. We're starting off with Orfist now. Remember when I was talking about how the format, you have to factor in Leonard, where you want to make sure your field is kind of like not too full. You don't want to have too many boosters. Right now, the new Orfist deck does that actually just perfectly, right? We have some new cards. Alviderd here. It's very Link Joker look-like, but his effect is that during your turn, if you're in Dark Knight, you get 2k, if you're in Abyssal Dark Knight, you get 5k, so it hits some nice numbers. But also the second effect is after it battles, you can retire one of your Shadow Army tokens and then retire one of your opponent's reguards. So you're basically making that empty, like let's say it's boosted by a Shadow Army token, you're making that empty space right there to be able to, you know, not get screwed by Leonard. At the same time, against like matchups like Nirvana, where they have annoying like 20k urges sitting on the field, you can retire that and not feel bad at all, or force him to at least intercept with it so it doesn't stay on the field. But yeah, it kind of does what you want to do. Another new card that you got is like Thumberino. This is when it boosts a Shadow Army token for that turn. You can give it 15,000 more power, and at the end of the battle, you retire the entire column. So you retire this, like these 2 cards, and then you get to draw a card. You don't retire your opponent's column, by the way. You just retire your column. But yeah, you get to draw a card, so you make that empty spot, and you kind of refund at least 1 card of it. And the Shadow Army token was free anyway, right? It was free. And then what things like Baromagnes just kind of refund itself. You know, does just put it to soul, counter charges. It just works, man. It just works. The new order that we got, Corroding Moonlight. This makes a Shadow Army token. So it's like CB1 come into play, call a Shadow Army token. Right, so that's pretty good. It's at grade 2 as well, so you can kind of rush through this. We're running four of the Cubidia, just for that rush, right? You ride Cubidia, you play down the corroding moonlight to call a 15k, and that gives a 5k to something else. Bam, bam, rush early, and then kind of refund those lines later on when they're entering their final rush or something like that, and then good time. We're running draws though, that's the only difference than fronts. Before I was running fronts, but you know, I want draws just to kind of dig more and then kind of get more cards to be able to push more, because although we do get some refunds with our cards, we still want to have more cards, right? We want to still dig to make bigger turns. So I'm running three of the draw triggers here. And then lastly, we have Prison. Now, I remember Prison, it looked pretty cool, but then it wasn't. It was kind of disappointing. The mechanic was kind of flip-floppy. But now, it's actually a pretty interesting deck. And I don't know if I built this deck the way that a lot of other people build it. I'm a very lame player, and I know that. I like playing defensively. So I basically built this deck around the idea of getting as much stuff into your prison as possible. So much junk that your opponent can't be bothered to get them out anymore. And then you have things like this Melty Heart here to minus a bunch of power, right? A bunch of power. It minuses for the turn. So against things like Lennon or Bruce, which restands its front row, or things like Bastion, which restands a card, you can minus that to Oblivion, and then the restand just is bad. And then against decks that don't restand, then it's just a free card that can grow infinitely powerful. Well, not infinitely powerful, but can do pretty well. Like this against like what, a Leonard, right? Or something that restands on a Bruce turn, you're shutting off 2 attacks. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So the rest of the deck is kind of built around that idea. We're running the new bug motor just to generate that early prisons early. If you draw in your opening hand, great. I'm still running Lamones. I think a lot of people don't like Lamone, but if you play very lame and play like kind of a deny style, you can make this like hits regards and then kind of get like 2 triggers into your prison line. And what are they going to do with 2 triggers? Are they going to call them out? Probably not. Probably not, right? If you do that and you generate like 5 things into your prison, then your Melty Heart's like minus 25k, which is it's good. It's good, right? Then I'm running 1 Perio Violet. This is just a null guard, pretty much a null guard for grade 2 honors. And then the new color we got, this Perio Turquoise, is actually insane. If you have 2 or more cards in your prison, it gets plus 5k during your turn, so it hits a decent number. And then if it's on the front row regard circle, if your opponent calls something out of the prison, that card gets minus 5k for the turn. So then calling out minus 5k, stuff hits less. You actually have quite a decent amount of defense, right? Because your rouges, because you're generating a bunch of random stuff into your prison now, just from like, the bug murders can get back, can put triggers in there, and then your Lamones or whatever can put stuff in there. You generally do hit this 2 prison threshold pretty easily. So this is like a 15k shield. Now when you compare it with everything else, 20k shield, 15k shield, 15k shield, and then this Melty Heart is a huge minus to your opponent. And then the Perio is another, like, kind of a weird null guard at the same time. And then your Turquoise also is minusing their power. You're getting a lot of, defensive capability. So one thing that I've been doing with Leonard with this deck is just kind of, when I face Bruce, I just wait till they deck out. It seems like a very lame strategy, but it sometimes works. So yeah, I don't even need to call anything to the back row. I think I call like 1 bug bonus to the back row, and that's how I played that matchup. But against a normal matchup, you can put down cards and boost, and then you can probably win harder. Hitting the triple drive is not an issue anymore, right? People used to be able to play around, calling limited things so you can never triple drive, but now it's just the triple drive life, man. Triple drive life. So overall, I'm liking this deck quite a bit. I don't think it's like top tier or anything, but it's pretty fun. and you know, Prison actually getting used is pretty good. Now, that is all the decks. It's been a long video. You can see all the deck lists in the deck codes below. And let me know what you guys think, what your decks are. I mean, we do VG top decks, but here's just a preliminary one for everyone to enjoy and at least give you some ideas. These aren't meant to be like the most refined decks of all time. They're a good starting point in my opinion. And then from there, you can kind of sprout your own ideas, or, you know, there's going to be so many people out there thinking of their own decks anyway. So maybe we'll see something really, really cool this upcoming set. But yeah, that's it from me. I will see you guys in the next video. And yeah, bye.